that for me is about putting happiness at the core of your business, because ultimately robots aren't happy, processes don't get happy, spreadsheets don't get happy. It's the people who actually work with these things. Those are the people who experience that happiness, and that's always down to a feeling of purpose, meaning, and alignment.
Welcome, everybody. I'm so excited today to have Carlos Saba with us. He has so much to share that I think you're going to find really enlightening. He helps create spaces for people to discuss and define their role in the world before it's too late. He's a coach, speaker, podcaster, and community builder who believes that we can all free ourselves to do the work we love if we allow ourselves the space and the time to create our own definition of success. Thank you so much for joining me, Carlos.
Yeah, you're welcome. I'm very excited to have this conversation and to throw around some ideas and maybe learn something and share something.
Awesome. So one of the things that I really enjoyed, I got to meet you through a workshop you did on pricing, and that's such a interesting topic for entrepreneurs of how do you price in a way that's powerful, that's not predatory, that's not vanity-like, that's just so clear about what you deliver. And I learned so much from that. And one of the things you addressed in that, at least somewhat indirectly, was this sense of authenticity and being able to have it really feel that you're not trying to scam anybody, you're not trying to be a victim. You're trying to have it be clearly what you're worth. When it comes to doing work that we love, I think a lot of us run into all the stuff that goes on in our head about it being possible or not being possible, inner barriers, outer barriers, people that tell us we're crazy, whatever it might be. What is it that you find for the most part stops people from doing the work they love, and how can they perhaps work on that?
Okay, there's a few, I would say, few hurdles, terrains, I would say people would navigate on this journey to building a business based on doing stuff they love. So the first basic simple one is, what is it I really love? And that's, I think that's one of the deeper questions, the less easy ones to answer. It's very much, to maybe put into context, I remember as a child at school, I used to be really jealous of kids, usually quite smart kids, who'd say, I'm going to be a doctor, or I'm going to be a lawyer, or I'm going to be an engineer. And me thinking, oh, that's interesting, quite high status jobs, but none of them really interested me. I was not really interested in any of them. And so there's this feeling like, what is it I really want to do? I don't know. I don't really know what to do. So there's that aspect of like, what is it I want to commit to? Because I think when you're not sure about what it is that you want to commit to, then everything is a distraction because you're not sure what you're being distracted from. So you kind of try everything, which is, I think, the thing to do, is you then have to try everything and see what sticks and what helps. So that's one thing. It's like there's a question about, how do I find what it is I really love? And also that can get mixed up with, I love watching football, or I love chilling out with my friends, or I love baking cakes. So that potentially could be a job. Mixed with and within that there's potential gold around, I have a passion for, or I really would love to create, or there are people I would love to work with. And understanding that, I think, isn't just a case of just introspection and thinking about what is it, what's my passion, but also an exercise of just interacting with the world and doing things and seeing things and meeting people. So there's I would say, unless you're struck by lightning and there's like a love at first sight with a job or a calling that just comes to you, it's a journey of experimentation, I think, trying things out. And so the pressure to find, oh, I need to do a job, do work doing something I love, well, just like with any relationship, don't go too fast. Take your time. Lots of first dates. Um, and I might go into how you do that. So that's one aspect.
Yeah, and
And
I
then
want
the
to jump
other
in
aspect,
there real quick to what you
yeah, go
said.
for it.
And that the whole time I was thinking was dating. Just that, just something simple. It's not, hi, I've met you, our kids are going to be named, blah, 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 blah. It's okay. And because there is that pressure that, well, what if I don't figure it out? And as entrepreneurs, we're so big on lost opportunity. We know what that means. And what am I missing out on? Well, I've had a happy life. I'm 80, I've this, I've that, but I didn't. Maybe you just had a happy life. So maybe it doesn't have to be that complex. So I didn't want to interrupt what you're saying, but I thought that was just so brilliant because so many people, I've done this for years. Well, what if this is not well, then love the one you're with, I guess,
That's an interesting point there. There's the whole when you're in a mindset that everything, any decision you make becomes a potential lost opportunity because you missed on something else. Right? If you take that with relationships, then it's like, who are you ever going to stick with? Or
Heavy.
who are you ever going to meet? And so there, I would say there's an element of trust, kind of trusting that you will make the right decision and trusting that if you do make a mistake, it's also rectifiable. You will go down dead ends, and that's okay. When we try and measure our progress against people who are much further advanced in their entrepreneurial or life journeys without understanding their contexts, because luck plays a part of this as much as anything else. Serendipity plays a part of this as much as anything else, as well as blood, sweat, and tears and toil. To try and feel like there's a linear path to success and think that you just have to do A, B, and C and then you get to where you need to be, then I think that can be a challenge. And it's a creative path. And the thing about creative paths that I've learned to understand is they're very, very messy to begin with, and get messy again sometimes. But there are moments where you stop at interesting places. And it's interesting. I remember a quote about art. A piece of art is never finished. It just stops at interesting places. And that for me is if you can take that perspective on life, which is a creative, and if you think of it as a creative journey of exploration, I think of entrepreneurship as a journey of self-discovery, then there's no like end, or there's no winning, and there's no like, oh, I'm done now and it's finished. It's just you're opening yourself up to stopping at interesting places.
And I love what you said. Two things, by the way, for those y'all listening or watching. At the beginning, I know Carlos is like wicked smart, and I said, okay, you're going to do some stuff, and he did that whole British thing of, well, I'll see if I can say something useful, and he's just like dropping these things, like, so just so you know, that's the humility there. I think it's legit, but that's so profound, and it reminds me of something an author I read once said, Shakti Gawain, and it was about a similar concept, but related to spirituality, of people wanting to have or be these perfect, loving, unconditionally accepting people. And her take was, look, I don't know about what happens in the next life, if there's a next life or whatever, but maybe that's where you're going to be that. But here, it's messy. Here on the human plane, it's messy, and it's supposed to be messy. And I think with entrepreneurialism, with love, with finding your passion, it does go back to it. And I hate this quote that, the harder you work for something, the more you value it. I hate it, but it's for the most part true. As a parent, there's so much stuff I've done that I don't love doing that I did because I love it. And I was thinking about that question of, what would you do if you had $100 million in the bank? That's that's what your purpose. And my understanding is, no, that's my ideal lifestyle. What I do with $100 million in the bank. My purpose, or at least part of it, is what I'll do if you pay me nothing. I'll wake up in the middle of the night and feed the baby, things like that. And so if we can get somewhere in the neighborhood of identifying what we love, what are the other obstacles? Because you and I talked in the pre-interview a little bit about things about all the voices in our head around the questions. What are they going to think? Is it going to work? What if I invest all this time? What do you find is the next thing that people run into, and how can they address that?
So that for me comes up to, well, springs to mind the word judgment. And so initially there's the self-judgment. Am I allowed to do this? That's one of the big things. And is this thing good? And then will other people judge me for doing it? And so I think this relates to, again, to that whole idea of who is the judge of this. What is the measure of success around this? And there are, if I'm thinking of the journey of a creative entrepreneur, there is value based on the experience of doing the thing for yourself. It's like, do you enjoy it? Is it something you love? Do you find flow? Do you find meaning in this work? And then there's value in terms of, will anyone pay you? Will anyone feel that they're going to get a benefit from what you do? And so there's intrinsic value based on what you feel is important. And then there's commercial value based on these metrics that people use, which is called money. And if you mix the two, then that can be a bit of a challenge. And so I think the next barrier for people when they're doing something they love is, how do they communicate the value of what they do to other people? And how do they understand who it is they want to serve and what it is they want to achieve? Because if you can do that well, my belief is you can do quite a lot of things yourself that you love and make some money out of it. How much? Again, it's hard, might not be in your control, but there is potential to make money out of all sorts of things. And we can see that on the internet, the kinds of stuff that people are able to make money off of, that's actually to us maybe valueless, completely valueless. But to someone out there, they'll pay 10, 100, maybe $1,000 for something that for us is not, does not mean anything. And so I think there's that, I think really tuning into that value is in the eye of the beholder. This is the thing I'm learning, rather than value is something that I state. Value is only something that I state because in my eyes. And this is where sometimes a lot of people who are, maybe they're creating art or doing something like performance, even like a coach, maybe even a podcast host, you create this thing and you say, okay, how many likes, hits, views do I get? And that dictates the value. No, it just dictates how many people align with what you say and believe in what you say. The intrinsic value is something else. And so I'm trying to clumsily say is that don't get held back by the fact that, everyone understands this. Oh my God, everyone's banging on my door to buy what I do or to watch what I'm creating. I think really focus on who is it I would really love to serve? Who is it that would really value the message that I'm trying to put out here, or the transformation I want to create? And then how can I tell the right stories, communicate in the right way, so I find more of those people, and the people who I do find that want my thing really, really value it? Because it could be something that you do effortlessly is the most valuable thing another person's ever seen.
Yeah, and that reminds me so much of just my business journey as a 20+ year entrepreneur. Still, the thing that pays the majority of my bills is something I never intended to create. It's a small software solution that a certain number of entrepreneurs find very valuable. It's not even truly my passion, but I'm really good at it. And it's one of those sort of blind talents. And also gets back to what you said of, the idea of what it's worth to the market. And that concept, I think, can be manipulated and taken for a ride. Like, oh, well, we sell our coaching for $10 million because, and, some people can run with that and be very persuasive, and they'll leave in their trail a bunch of clients that are dissatisfied. And the 31st day after the 30-month guarantee, it's like, oh gosh, why did I buy this? And I think for me, that's at least at times been a trigger, because I thought, gosh, I don't want to be that person. And I know that being in the conversation of I don't want to be blah or something is not a great place to be. It becomes, okay, what do I want to be? Well, I want to be the person that's delivering something. I want to be the person that is offering something. You mentioned another concept that's another buzzword in the last 8 to 10 years or so is story. And of course, the word's been around for so many years. but the idea of your story. And so again, you have all these courses now of people telling their story, and some is more about how do I genuinely tell a story, and some is how do I tell a story in some way so I can sell you some stuff. And that's okay too, depending on where you go with it. One of the things I find a lot of the audience members I have, and I imagine you might have a lot with the people you serve, is again, wanting this to be genuine so that I feel good about what I'm selling, that it really does feel like this mix of, or this meeting of, yes, I'm offering something that's truly valuable. And perhaps to your comment, not getting too caught up in what is the exact objectified value of this, because we'll never get that. You know, like I said, the pet rock, the house that you value or I don't value or whatever it is, and whatever it sells at. How do you find that people who really do want to create value, they're what some people would call heart-centered, they really want to make an impact, how can they get over, well, first, what are the biggest challenges to selling the work that we're passionate about? And how do you tell people to, start looking at those?
When you're talking, what sprang to mind is a lot of people who are in the space of kind of social impact and social entrepreneurs. I think that for me is like quite a specific case where there are people who are really driven by purpose and really driven by a need to serve. And maybe, they're also doing it from a place of flow, and they have the skills, but it's a really hard thing to sell. If you are working with disadvantaged mothers, trying to help them, manage their finances or something, or you're trying to help them educate their kids, it becomes a challenge to know, all right, how do you sell that? And so you then have to think about creative ways to generate revenue from that, to make that work. And I won't go into all the different ways you can do that, but it's a harder thing to kind of come to terms with, and how you match that. And then there are other aspects around, I think, if there is work that that has some kind of immediate calculable value. It's just a case of being able to have the right conversations with people to help them understand the value of what you do. And this is where the storytelling part, I think, comes very important, because for instance, I was talking to someone today about running a course on resilience and avoiding burnout. It's not an easy one to do in terms of something that people want to buy. Firstly, who's going to admit, well, maybe more people these days, but who's going to admit most of the time I'm burning out, and so I need to do a course on it? And secondly, so how do you put value on a course like that? What is the monetary value of a course that teaches you not to go get burnt out, particularly if people don't know when they're burnt out, or don't know when they're just about to get burnt out? Because that's the thing about burnout. You never know that you're actually burning out. And so and I was on Clubhouse today listening to a conversation around some women talking about well-being in business. And what this woman says, she spent 5 months trying to recover from burnout. So it made me think, if you could say, how much revenue did you lose in those 5 months of burnout? Even if you $5,000 a month, say, that's conservative, for instance, it's 25 grand. How much is that worth avoiding that 25 grand missed opportunity? To really be really crude, but then at least then that starts to help people understand, if I spent $1,000 on this course, I could potentially avoid that. And then that starts to also then make you a bit clear about who you serve, because you can't serve someone who's only earning $1,000 a month. They might think, not sure, not really, it's a bit more painful. But if they're earning $10,000 a month or whatever, there's that, that's a loss. And $1,000 is nothing compared to that loss. So there's a very crude way of just kind of helping people, because sometimes we do, and this is the storytelling part, the selling part, the part that people might feel is inauthentic and a bit icky and used car salesman. But the storytelling part is to help people understand the value for themselves. You don't have to, it's not about manipulating them, is then giving them informed choice, because maybe they just don't have enough information to choose you.
Yeah, I come from the insurance background, so much of the insurance conversation is avoiding loss. Nobody wants, just like the burnout, nobody wants to talk about it. Nobody until something happens. And so usually the conversation is, well, look, here's your financial goals. We want these. What happens if you can't work? And to your point, your income is X amount. Is what is it worth to protect that? And that happens to be called disability insurance. At least in the United States, it is. And it's still not a sexy conversation. It's not a fun conversation, but it can be a very meaningful conversation. And if you're somebody that's had your life impacted by that, all of a sudden there's that passion that you mentioned. That's a huge part to it. And I know for me, one of the things that I've looked at that your pricing course helped me with, and even just some of the conversation around it, was also just remembering that, to your point about the person that's losing 1,000 a month versus 5,000 a month versus 10,000 a month, again, that might even reflect different, whether it's product levels or pricing levels. One might be your book that's $10, one might be your e-course, one might be your coaching. And that's taken me, even still, sometimes it's hard for me to wrap my head around. And yet I've had some people say, well, wait, if you're going to help somebody make X% more, well, if they have 3 more zeros after their income, it's worth more to them than if they don't. And the part is, well, now it almost feels like I'm stealing from people because I just gave it to God. Well, no, because usually also somebody with 3 more zeros, there's going to be more complexity. It's not just going to be, here's my ebook that's 20 pages and all of a sudden, boom, it happened. Usually there's going to be more going on there. But I think that's the part where, at least for me, one of the things is on my journey of getting my master's degree in psychology, then realizing that I ran into the same challenges with my coaching clients, is that some implemented, some didn't, some cared, some did, thought, okay, well, I can either make 30,000 a year or I can make a lot more than that. And at that time I happened to have met the woman that became my wife. She was like, okay, I don't want to be living off of 30,000 a year. So that made that really, really simple, some practicality. And in that even world, and I was working at a place called Covenant House, as a runaway shelter. And there were kids there that had all sorts of things going on. Some were truly homeless. Some were running away. Some was, mom and dad won't let me do ecstasy until 3 a.m. and come in the house. So they kicked me out. So again, different levels of what one might call homelessness. And even in that world, there was a small percentage, maybe about 1 out of 20 kids would really just pull what was being offered. And the entire staff would move to support this kid because they saw, oh, wow, this person really gets it. They really want to improve their life. They really want to. And one of the things that reminded me with a lot of this with the pricing was, okay, look, I can always still have a scholarship, or I can always find that person, or I can always even just say, hey, because there is such a currency difference in the world. 6 out of 7 people in the world live off of less than $32 a day, if the book Factfulness and the information that Hans Rosling is accurate. So I'm making a lot more than $32 a day. I still want to be able to help those people. And so I think there's ways we can do that. And yet the challenge then becomes, oh gosh, wait, now you're asking me to save the planet. And it seems so huge. How then can you turn that into something where you're still achieving more, but either doing less or being reasonable with your time without trying to save the world? As you talk with these social entrepreneurs and these causes that, again, can pull on our heartstrings so much that can make us become financially, or make financially unwise decisions, which then can hurt our family situation and do other things that aren't good. How do you balance that? And how can you perhaps work on leverage or leverage your passion in a way that allows you to still tap into areas, but still have a balanced life and a happy life?
I'm assuming we're talking about how do we make money, do good, and be happy at the same time.
Yeah, I figure you might know a couple things about that.
All right. So the first thing is there's no silver bullet. There's no strategy or process that allows you to then find that perfect balance. But I think there's an awareness that we can have that can help us when we might veer too far one way, and allow us to make a conscious decision. Because, there are some massive issues in the world and big problems. And I think the difficulty comes not from spending too much time on those missions and those objectives of that impact. and then maybe neglecting other parts of your life, whether it's money or happiness. Not doing, neglecting those things isn't the problem. It's resisting and judging yourself for neglecting those things. If you make a decision that I'm gonna spend my time, I don't know, driving a meal truck around so I can make sure all these old people can get their food at a regular time, and that means I can't actually pick up my kids at a certain time. If you do that and beat yourself up every single day for doing it, then you need to think about it. But if you make a conscious decision, say, I'm going to put this in place in the right way. My partner we're going to make an agreement. They are going to do the childcare, or we're going to pay a nanny to help us. If you can do that and not be and face the judgment that people might have around that lifestyle, but you do that with integrity because you believe in what you're doing and you don't second guess yourself, then that's fine. This is the whole part about being able to be clear about the work we do and create our own definitions of success. I think it all comes down to our own aligning with our values and aligning with what we believe. Now, as a parent, I might think, well, I don't know, does that really help your kids if they don't see you as much as they could? That's my own perspective, though. And I think in a world where we are so easy to go black or white and really don't allow ourselves to dance with nuance and really understand that actually no one is truly right or truly wrong. We all live with our own contexts and our needs and are defined by the experiences and upbringings we've had. Then we can be a bit more forgiving, not only to others, but to ourselves, to then do the work that we need to do in the way that works best for us. I think the foundational parts of all of this is really just being aware of where happiness and meaning can come from. And again, without trying to be dogmatic, the thing that really helped me when I'm thinking about this is a dynamic equilibrium between being and doing and self and others. I think a lot of people, particularly in the space of impact or social impact, can find themselves in the space of doing for others. And you can also, people who are workaholics are essentially doing for others. You could argue that because what they're trying is to please their parents or please their peers by looking like they can, do all of this work. And if you do that unconsciously, then I think that's where you can find yourself in challenging places emotionally. But if you can realize, actually, I think I need to be on my own for a bit, or I think I need to just stop, or I think I need to spend time with my family, or I think I need to learn and find other areas of your life that can compensate or bring you back into a bit more equilibrium, then I think then you have a better chance of making more conscious decisions where you're not basically running 100 miles all the time. It's like there are peaks and troughs to all of this, and to consciously slow down and speed up when it's needed, or to make the hard decisions and say, okay, fine, I have to do this now. I'm sorry, I can't put you to bed, kids. Yes, you're crying. Really sorry. I have to go away. I've got to go away for a week. Sorry, wife or husband. Do you mind? But this is important to me. Being able to negotiate those challenges, then I think we can be in a better place to do the work we love without hurting other people, still create value and not burn out.
Yeah, I think there's so much in that. And I just think about how ineffective and unproductive and unprofitable, whatever word you want to use, it is to be unhappy. And just if you think of all the different ways you mentioned, the person that's trying to overcompensate, the person, all these different situations, the person that's judging it too much. As a father with a 14-year-old and a 12-year-old, I was so clear that, because I was raised by a stay-at-home mom, that was the right way to do things. And now my kids are 14, 12, and I see the pros and I see the cons. And the pros and the cons actually have nothing to do with the mom staying at home or not. Or it has to do with other variables that are more about, are we present when we talk to them? Can we be present? And yes, are we happy people? I remember reading this study that talked about that there was a study done that showed that a variable for parents and their their kids' happiness with the relationship with their parents was less impacted by what time the parent came home from work and more impacted by how present the parent was and how happy the parent reported their job. So this was like they were looking for A and they found B, truly like science, not an experiment, not we're looking to prove A and therefore we found A, shocker. But they were thinking it was, okay, how many, what time do they come home? That's going to be the issue. But they had, thank God, taken a bunch of other data points. And one of the points was how satisfied is that parent with their job? And that was more of an indicator of the quality of relationship with the child and the happiness of the self-report, again, all self-report of the child. And it reminds me of something that you said, which I loved so much, was the idea of, and again, it's a balance thing, of thinking about the money, not worrying about it. Being in a place where, yes, we need to make that work, but it doesn't have to be the end all be all. And I think about how that ties into also our embarrassment, am I being responsible or irresponsible, and all these different things. And I think so much of it is being humble enough to say, look, that's their path. This is my path. And of course, if they're saying, hey, it's not working out, I need help. Of course, that's where we hopefully step in as professionals or point them to somebody who can help. But I know for me, there's so much that goes on in my head. And at least the school system has told me I'm smart. And I know so many different ways that I'm not very intelligent. And just to see all the different ways that if we just get these ideas out of our head and all the drama, all the energy that's spent making it right, making it wrong, why do they this, why do they, and just, dude, do you have any energy to do your work when we get in that place, as opposed to just doing it? And something you said, I would love you to expand on, if you don't mind, is just the basic concept. It's been said before. What are you going to do when you're on your deathbed? What do you want to be able to say you did? Not to impress somebody else, but for your own self. How does that tie in, do you think, to how important it is for us to not necessarily get paid for the work we love, but somewhere in our life that if we have a passion to do it? And I realized I didn't mean to turn that into a leading question, because that assumes that somebody doesn't have to make their money. My experience is you don't have to make your money in your passion. Maybe you're a violin player and you do it outside and then you wait tables. Let me reopen the question. What have you found, both in the sense of, do the two have to be the same where it makes you money? And then how do you tie that into just your overall journey?
So we're talking about death, I think, and how that can, well, the way I look at it, how that can give us a sense of perspective of what's important and what's not important. I think the challenge, again, with people who don't necessarily do work they love, or maybe get totally obsessed with one thing and that's all they do. I think it's trying to put yourself in a place of not regretting, I think, and living from a place of clear intention. So when I think about that whole kind of deathbed meditation or practice, kind of the three questions that I've heard people say you can ask when you think about that is, what have I learned? What have I experienced? And how have I contributed to other people's lives? And using those three questions as a way to create some focus as to where you want to spend your time. Because I love playing Fortnite on the PC and I enjoy binging out on The Mandalorian on Netflix. Other streaming services are available. But there are other distractions that come into our lives around, like opportunities for work or people to meet or podcasts to be on. And I think it's being able to instinctively and intuitively decide whether those are things you want to do or follow, or things that you want to reject and ignore. And I think having that kind of image of, okay, at the end of days, what is it I want to be able to say about the things that I've experienced in life, or the things that I've learned, or the way I've helped? And then what is the theme, if there are any, that joins them? then it becomes easier to say, okay, I'm going to commit to this, and I'm going to spend a year doing this, or I'm going to talk to Wade, or I'm going to spend half a day on Clubhouse exploring weird conversations. Like for me, learning is a very big part of, is a very core need for me. I always feel like I want to learn new things, and I always want to connect, particularly through conversation. And so I'm very drawn, and I'm allowing myself to then to follow those opportunities. I don't like to feel like a sheep, like I'm just following other people. I'm just listening passively to things or being told what to do. I like to experience stuff. So I'm not going to go to a massive conference, or I'm not going to go and listen to just one person talk at me. And a lot of the time I don't even want to read a book because it just feels it doesn't satisfy that need to engage and learn through engagement. And so it starts to help me by thinking about things. It starts to help me what things I want to commit to and what the things I want to do. And so I found that community building, coaching, learning, essentially learning how business works at a real kind of basic psychological level more than anything else, understanding how that relates to our own happiness, that stuff fascinates me and I enjoy. And at the end of days, to be able to say, wow, I met all of these people, I learned these things, I went to these places and I had these experiences. Okay, I think I'm starting to see how that fits into the way I want to behave and the choices I want to make.
Yeah, I love that so much. And there's something that you and I talked about was just checking in with what's mean for you right now. And that's something I remember hearing once in a Deepak Chopra audio. And it was just something where he said, trust your instinct. Whatever's the next right thing is usually going to service for you. Trust your intuition, whatever you want to call that. His point was about not judging your instinct. Obviously, we're assuming we're not talking about illegal things or things that would harm other people, but just that idea of, rather than getting so clear of what it's supposed to be, all this judgment makes it very difficult to get to what that thing is. And as you said, there's things we just can't understand as far as why we like certain things, why we want, but yet we like doing them. I like playing beach volleyball. If you ask me to run from here 10 yards, I have no desire to run. If you put a ball in front of me in 90-degree sand, I will run for 3-5 hours. And a net. And that's in some rules. And that's, go figure, so that's kind of the way I guess we are. And we try to understand that. One of the other things we talked about in the pre-interview is reframing your definition of success. And again, kind of taking ownership of that and making it your own. What would you say to that person that's saying, I'm struggling with even defining success? Like, what is success? What would be good? What would you tell that person when we perhaps balance what might be things that sound like truths, like, hey, enough people say, well, if you're doing what you love, that's some sort of version of success. Some would say money or this and that, versus, oh, no, this is what tells me inside. How do you balance those?
So it depends, I think, if you consider success a final destination. And it relates to what we talked about before, about actually it's stopping at interesting points or at interesting places. And so if you were doing a road trip, or if I was going to do a road trip around the US, is success reaching the West Coast? Or is success, oh, I'm at the Yellowstone Park? Or, ooh, now I'm looking over the Grand Canyon. Or, ooh, I'm in Portland and checking out the massive, was it Oregon River? My geography is really bad, and so I picked a really bad analogy.
You're talking to somebody who lives in America. You're fine. There's no worries. Most of my audience at the moment is American, North American, United States of American. You're good, man.
But it's the what I'm doing this journey for is the experiences along the way, and the success comes from the richness of those experiences. If success is um, uh, a tangible, numeric, measurable thing, well, then what happens when you've got that? What's next? What and I'm not saying 1,000 followers or 10,000 followers or a certain amount of money in the bank or a number of houses or number of friends isn't success. It's just, then what next? And so to be caught up that, all right, success stops when you get to a certain place, is potentially damaging and challenging. And so, and to tie it to a number or something very tangible or physical can be challenging, because ultimately it's a feeling. And I think when we can feel successful, whether we've achieved the goal or not, then I think that's a useful way to look at things. And then it's the case, what is that feeling? Where does that feeling come from? And the way I look at it, the way I understand it these days, is we experience pleasant or unpleasant feelings depending on the needs, our core emotional needs that are being met or unmet. So for instance, I have a need for learning. And if I'm learning or if I'm engaging with people, I have a real feeling of joy, of happiness, of aliveness. And so right now I'm feeling successful. And this is like, oh, amazing. I'm talking to Wade across the Atlantic. Who would have known? But also, the flip side, if I feel down or I feel low, if I'm unpleasant, I then know actually I'm not close to my metric of success. And those metrics of success are tied to needs and the beneficial feelings that you get from addressing those needs. And then I would say the journey is always tapping into, what are these needs? How have they evolved? Where do they come from? And maybe what new needs do I start to cultivate because I become more sophisticated in understanding what success means to me.
Awesome. Thank you. So you have a community that you co-lead with a friend of yours, a partner of yours who you've been in business with for years. It's called the Happy Startup Online Community. And I want to just go to a couple questions specifically. And I just mentioned that so also people know the context, because don't think we mentioned at the beginning. That's something you help people a lot with. When people start to take this, and I know in my journey this was the case, and they start saying, okay, I've got this idea. I want to be passionate about something. I still have bills to pay. How can people make starting a business less scary? How can they anchor in things that are more grounded, like money and paying bills and making sure we can afford this, so that the person who says, well, yeah, Wade, I have kids. I'm not single anymore, living at my parents' house, where I can just drop 80 hours a week on something for the next 8 years and hope something happens. I have these things, so I already have a pretty good life. I don't want to give it all up, and yet I want to start something. How can people do it in a way that's practical and yet less scary, so they can actually take action?
Okay. I'd like to answer that at two levels: a deeper, more challenging level, and maybe a more tactical, strategic level. I'll start with the deeper, more challenging level. I feel that question is always rooted in the idea of safety and security. I think starting something new and not knowing whether you'll make the right money can challenge your own sense of security and safety. And if you have a responsibility to family, their safety, potential safety and security. And mixed in with that is all the judgment around the responsibility or irresponsibility of jeopardizing that safety and security. The very simple answer is not giving a fuck. Like, okay, kids, we might lose our house, but it's going to be a fun journey along the way. I still love you. We'll work it out some way. I might have to work in a burger van for the rest of my life, but there's this real interesting thing that we could do here, and it's going to benefit the world, and it's going to be really impactful. It's not an easy thing for people to do, but just a facetious way of thinking about it. It is very linked to what does it mean to be a responsible person, and what does it mean to really to live a responsible adult life. At a kind of tactical and strategic level, is like, again, linked to the safety. It's like, don't risk too much then. You know, what's your appetite for risk? What is the paradigm you're working in? And how can you start something with spending as little money as possible? And one way to de-risk anything is to know, actually, does anybody want the thing you want to create? And that involves storytelling. So why are you doing this thing in the first place? What is the change you're trying to make in people's lives, so people can actually understand why you're doing it, not what you're doing, why you're doing it. Then engaging with people with that story, so you understand, are the assumptions you make about the problems they're facing or the things they want in life, is that a real thing? Or is that just in your head and it's just you who thinks about it? Or where do these people hang out really? Are you trying to sell something? Are you trying to sell ice to Eskimos? And it's like, yeah, we don't care about this here. And then through that conversation, deeper connection, building the trust, building the community around you, building the audience, if you want to call it that as well. And being able to, when we're going back to the pricing thing, know what is the value of the outcome that you want to create for them. And what is the value of you taking away the obstacle or providing the service that helps them achieve the outcome or the feeling that they're looking for. And if you can do that without building anything, without spending too much money, essentially, if you can bootstrap it along the way where you're not seeking funding or investment or taking money from friends and family until you need to, until you know, actually, there's a good chance that the thing that's blocking me isn't, is this a good idea or whether people want it? It's just I don't have enough money to build the stuff. Then, okay, you have a better chance of transitioning from doing the 9 to 5, if that's what you're doing at the time, or running one business, to then transitioning to another business. And that's very much our story. We used to run a very successful digital agency, and we just closed it down to do the Happy Startup School. It was partially a leap of faith, but also we'd proven that there was a need. There was a need for stuff that we could create, whether that was experiences, coaching, training. There was, and we had built a community around that. And we've evolved over the past 6 years doing lots of different things, but with the same people, with the same values, with the same aspirations. And this has been nearly a 10-year journey. And so we didn't just stop and start a new thing. There was a good overlap of a couple of years while we're testing the idea out and connecting with the right people.
Awesome. Thank you. 2 more questions for you. Number 1, what's the best way that you found to either tune out or address the fearful or negative voices from others or that come from within?
I wish I knew the answer to that. Then I'd be like so happy. That's a really interesting one. I'll take it at a very personal level in terms of, for me, who are the negative voices? I think, for a while, the negative voices were my parents' voices in terms of, oh, you need to be better. Oh, that's not good enough. Oh, look at what that person did. Can you be better than them? Kind of thing, or maybe not even appreciating the hard work. So this real sense of, oh, I need to, if this isn't perfect, then I'm not going to do it. Or, oh my God, I'm scared if I do this and someone judges it. Oh, no, I don't think I can show it to anyone. And what helped for me there was just talking to my parents. I was like, when, not even like questioning them directly, just understanding more about how they grew up and how they evolved and what context they were in. So in a broader level, I think it's really self-knowledge, understanding where are these fears actually coming from, and how can you accept them, in my case, and say, okay, cool, they're a part of me. I know when they're coming up. Can I take a breath and respond differently rather than instinctively, which is the interesting part when we talk about intuition and instinct when making decisions, but rather from unconsciously and using unconscious instinct in that, if there's like react, fight or flight type mode, to, okay, I'm going to do this right now. I know I'm going to actually act this way because that's my habit. Is this the most useful thing to do? So there's, I think there's mindfulness there. There's being in community. There's talking it out with close entrepreneurs or friends or people that understand that journey. And then through that, learning more about yourself and what triggers you and how you can overcome those triggers.
Awesome. Thank you. And then the last thing, and just want to let the people listening, there's so much work you all are doing, from the courses you all have, the community, and something that I just dabbled into a little bit and I really liked was your focus of putting happiness at the core of your business model. Can you explain a little bit about what that means or what that looks like?
So for me, it's about how do you create something that's not only financially, but also energetically sustainable. And it's very proven that people can make very successful, very financially lucrative businesses, but feel completely burnt out and feel completely unhappy. So my premise is really about, if we can tune in to what happiness really means, and not just the pleasant, fluffy feelings, for me, it's very linked to meaning, purpose, and alignment. And when we are building businesses, checking in that this is really something that serves me as well as serves other people, so that you're not building business because that's the way businesses are built, or that's what is expected to you, or that's how they've done it, so I'm going to do it the same way. But more around, actually, how do I want to experience business? Do I want to be there for my friends and family? Do I want to be able to work remotely? Do I want to have a place that feels like a structure, a physical place where I can work and serve people? Having those conscious needs met, and this is, we're going again back to the needs, and then designing the business around that, rather than what's the business model, what's the market opportunity, what's the customer, who's the early adopter, rather than just only focusing on the strategy and tactics of business, but also on the humans who are inhabiting and executing in that business. That for me is about putting happiness at the core of your business, because ultimately robots aren't happy, processes don't get happy, spreadsheets don't get happy. It's the people who actually work with these things. Those are the people who experience that happiness, and that's always down to a feeling of purpose, meaning, and alignment.
Wow. You just ended like that. Boom. That's so wow. I think of that quote, and I'm going to butcher the quote, but the idea of that change is dependent upon unreasonable people. That, and I forget the whole quote, but basically that all changes comes from unreasonable people. Therefore, like, we're the unreasonable people that say, no, I don't want to do what's rational. I don't want to do what's reasonable. I want to do what I want to do. And not in some egotistical way, but in a way that says, yeah, this is my path. This is what I'm doing. And again, as we've talked about, this is how I can serve and how it all connects. Thank you so much. You've shared so much that I think our audience is going to love. Where can people find out more about your work?
So our website is thehappystartupschool.com. You'll find us on all social media channels under the username Happy Startups. So whether that's Instagram, Twitter, I'm not sure if we've got a TikTok account actually, but anyway. And Yeah, there's a if you want to listen and listen to some of the people that are in our community and some of the ideas and thoughts they have, there's a podcast, the Happy Entrepreneur podcast, and you can get to it by going to a happy one word dot link. So a happy dot link / podcast. And yeah, more stories from people who kind of with challenging ideas and different ways of looking at life and work.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And I'll get those links and we'll make sure we put those in. Thank you all so much. Again, I can suggest you all check out what he's doing, what they're doing. Really awesome work. I've experienced some of it and already has made an impact on my business. So again, thank you for coming out and having this conversation. And as always, look forward to helping you all help more people, make more money in less time, do what you do best so you can better enjoy your family, your friends, and your life. Thanks for listening.